Hi, my name is Nicole Green, and I'm the co-director of eXtend Tutorial and also the tutor for American History and American Literature. I prepared this video to give you some more information about these classes so that you can make an informed decision about whether to enroll your student. Let's get to the slideshow. Okay, so again, this course is American History and American Literature. 2 courses, 2 credits in one. Let's talk about that. First, let me tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Nicole Green. Again, as I said, I've been married for 25 years. I'm the mom of 3 students who've always been homeschooled. I have 1 graduate, 1 who is a class of 22 senior, and another high schooler. I am a 16-year homeschool veteran. I am the author of Homeschool 101, Chart the Course, Enjoy the Journey, and also a homeschool consultant to families across the country. I'm the founder of Homeschool Moms Pray, a ministry for mothers of homeschooled children who get together monthly to pray and encourage each other and just spend some quality time together in the Lord. Okay, American History and American Literature, 2 credits in 1 class. How will that work? I know you all are asking that question, so let's get into it. Okay, so let's talk about when American History and American Literature are together. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, the 2 classes will meet together as one in a flipped classroom environment in which in-class discussions will lay historical foundation for the physical settings, people, times of the literature being read, and also enhance students' understanding of American history in the context of the rich literature that students will read. So there are 4 full-length works that both the history students and the literature students will both be reading. So if your student is taking history and literature, they'll read those books, and then they will work on them independently depending on the class. And we'll talk more about how that'll work. But there are 4 books that both courses have in common. And then each class will have work to do opposite or separately. You'll see. Let's talk about it. So what will both American History and American Literature students do in class together? So together, students will participate in class discussions, Socratic seminars, and other large group activities, team games, small group activities that facilitate the synthesis of both the history and the historic literature. Okay, so they'll work together, whether the student is taking one or the other. These activities are common to both courses. So then separately, through 2 Google Classrooms, each of the 2 courses has its own syllabus and coursework. Each course will be graded separately, and each course has a full load of 2 distinct high school credits. Okay, let's talk first about American history. In the American History Google Classroom, students will read from the assigned textbook. They'll view slideshows, do research, write essays, complete assignments that are specific to the historical details of the time period, event, person, era, etc., movement being studied. Okay, so in American history, the students will do their work in the Google Classroom that is specifically to the historical aspect of what we are learning. Again, when we're in class together, we're going to synthesize the information about the history with the full-length works that they're reading. We'll do some talk about setting and what's going on behind the scenes. And the history students and the literature students will you'll get a little bit of both in the class setting when we're in person. But at home in the Google Classroom, the history students will complete assignments that are specific to the historical nature, the historical details of what we're studying. And so we will go as history students in the history class, we will go through American history from just about the pre-Columbian era, all the way through current times, okay? American history students will utilize the American history textbook. They'll also read those 4 full-length works of historical literature I told you about. They'll read lots of primary source documents and speeches, and also they will utilize tutor-created slideshows, videos, and other multimedia tools, as well as in-person and virtual field trips to get a full, well-rounded American history course. Okay, let's talk about American literature separately. In the American Literature Google Classroom, students will complete projects and other assignments that are specific to appreciating the literary and historical context of the assigned pieces. Annotation Identifying literary devices and their usage, and textual analysis will be expected for each work read. American literature students will read the 4 full-length works of historical literature we discussed, several additional works too that are written by American authors. They will include novels, memoirs, short stories, poetry, essays, plays, and speeches. Students will be invited to in-person and virtual field trips, and will also, particular to the American literature course, will have screenings and watch parties for films or performances based on the literature that is studied in this class. Okay, so so as a literature student, history students will have a textbook and do other history specific activities, mostly much more essay writing and other projects that are historical in nature. Literature students will read other books that have nothing to do with the history. I mean, they're mostly, they will be speeches and other things as I listed here on the slide, but they are also a bunch of reading that has nothing to do with the history. So the history students and the literature students won't always be reading the same thing. And they'll also be attending the screenings and watch parties that the history students are not necessarily invited to. Okay, so what is expected from students in American history and American literature? Students are expected to behave respectfully and appropriately at all times in class and on field trips. They're expected to come to class prepared to participate in the day's discussion. So in the Google Classrooms, the students will know what they need to be prepared for discussing the next class. So that may be something from one of those 4 historical works. It may have something to do with the setting. So maybe we'll have some students who are talking to us about the setting and the history and what's going on in the world. It's going to be a great synthesis of history and literature in the classroom, but the students need to be prepared to participate in the discussions, and they'll have all of that guidance from me in person and also from the Google Classroom. They'll also complete all work on time and follow instructions for turning it in. Okay, how will students be graded and assessed in American history? So I said before that each of these courses carry their own 1 credit, right? And each of them are graded separately. So for American history, class participation is 30% of the quarter grade. Students need to be prepared in this class to have discussions, to participate in activities. It's not a sit in your seat and just take notes from the board kind of class. That's not what my American history class is like. So students need to be prepared to participate. That's 30% of their grade. There will also be parent proctored tests and other homework assignments for quarters 1 through 3 that will be turned in via Google Classroom, and they will comprise 20% of the grade. So 20% each, so 20% for tests and 20% for homework assignments. And those homework assignments will be for quarters 1 through 3. We'll talk about quarter 4 in a second. And so that's 30% for class participation, 20% for tests, 20% for the homework assignments, and then the quarterly history projects will round out the grade with the final 30%, okay? So the quarterly history projects will be quarters 1 through 4, right? And then honors distinction is earned by students who complete the practice exercises and register for and take one or both of the CLEP U.S. History exam. So homework assignments will only be quarters 1 through 3 in terms of that 20%. They'll also, it'll be a separate, the practice exams will be their homework for quarter 4. So that'll all make sense. It'll be spelled out a little bit more complete and a little bit more detail in the course syllabus. But the CLEP exam, there are 2 of them, U.S. History 1, U.S. History 2. We will cover enough history to set the students on a path to be able to be prepared to take both of those CLEP tests. One of your required resources for American history is the U.S. History CLEP exam prep book. Okay. So how will students be graded and assessed in American literature? Class participation, again, is 30% of the quarter grade. And so I put here, shyness will not be penalized. I don't know if I said that in the last one. Students don't have to be the most gregarious and outgoing and jump into every conversation, but they do need to participate. They do need to be able to respond when called upon. And that's why I put that there. Also, homework assignments will be turned in via Google Classroom, comprise 20%. And then they will have literature projects, including some full-length essays that will make up the other 50%. So American literature is heavy on projects. The way they will engage the information and let me know that they're mastering that information and that material is through projects. And some of those projects, they'll always have a full-length essay option for a project. And then there'll be other times when a full-length essay is what is required, literary response essays, analysis essays and such. Okay. So what can parents expect from American history and American literature? I'm the tutor, you're the teacher. I will remind you of that all year. Okay. So whenever something arises with your student, whether it's academic or something that has to do with their understanding or how much work they're getting done, you are the teacher. And so I will always turn that right back to you. We can talk about my role and your role, and we'll figure out how to make the best possible combination of our partnership to benefit your student. You can also expect a rich historical and or literary experience from your students. So if your students are in both, they get a rich historical experience and an excellent literary experience by participating in both classes or either or, depending on how you register them. Opportunities to accompany your student on field trips designed to enrich the lives of adults and students alike. We'll take some great field trips. I love living in Washington, D.C. It is the best place to study American history and literature. And so we're going to take advantage of all the things that are here for us to see and do in our area where we live. And then also your students' understanding to be broadened, and some of their biases toward themselves and others will be challenged. You can expect that from this course. So what is expected from parents in American history and American literature? Again, remembering that you, the parents, are the teachers in homeschool. Remember that you have the privilege of ensuring that your student is working to their potential, okay? Sign up for Guardian Summary. That is a tool that is provided through Google Classroom to help you keep an eye on your students' grades and progress in class mid-quarter. You'll get an end of quarter grade, you'll get an end of the school year grade. But mid-quarter, as progress is going along, Guardian Summary is the way to see what your student is up to. And remember, that's your job to communicate any issues with Mrs. Green. If I don't hear from you, I'm going to assume no news is good news, that whatever grade your students are getting, you know that that's what they're getting, and I will move on with the class. Okay, so homeschooling is individual. Homeschooling is independent. Homeschooling is personal, and I don't get involved in other families' homeschooling unless they reach out to me with a concern, and then we'll talk about it. Okay? Okay, so how should students prepare for American history and American literature? Before class begins, you should assemble all required books and materials. So the course list, the materials list is being built. At the time of this recording, it is not even on, I don't have everything on the document yet, but soon, in the next few days, you'll be able to, maybe by the time you watch, I don't know when you'll watch it, but in the next few days, I will have the required books and materials listed, and I'm going to tell you that you'll probably see literature books will be chosen from the following, and there'll be a list of them. So I'm going to admonish you not to buy anything until till just before April, when the first payment is due. By then, I will have vetted all the sources that I'm considering, and then I'll have a final resource list for you so that you can decide whether the books and materials are something you want your child to read and interact with over the course of this course, or these courses for the program year. The students need to make sure they learn to type and use Google Docs and Google Slides. They need to access their eXtend Gmail account. You won't get that until sometime in August maybe, but they need to make sure they access it when it's available to them and get signed into our Google Classroom. And they need to complete the assigned summer reading and writing assignments. Students, all of my students, none of my students really like that I give them summer reading assignments, but I like to lay a foundation because we only have 28 weeks. So there's a foundation laid, takes about 2 or 3 hours, give or take, over the summer. They can do it all in 1 or 2 days before class begins. And then we jump right into class and we all have a foundation and we're all starting at the same point, okay? Also, parents, you should prepare by pre-reading and perusing the required books and materials. I talked about that with the last slide. That information will be available to you before April 10th. You also I'm asking you to prepare by ensuring that your student learns to type and use Google Docs and slides, and discuss the class expectations and the parent expectations with your student. Class expectations will be spelled out specifically in our syllabus and the welcome letter, and I'm sure you have parent expectations as well. So make sure you and your student are on the same page, okay? If you have any more questions about American history and American literature, please feel free to forward them to me at ngreen@extendhomeschool.com, and I'll be sure to get right back to you and answer them as thoroughly as possible. Thanks so much for checking out this video. I'm looking forward to having your student in class.